everybody, Earl at thelogbook.com, back for more Voyages of Shelf Discovery. Been a while since I did one of these. It's turned into one of those years. I have kind of been questioning, okay, do I need to be opening anything else, or do I need to be bracing to turn around and sell stuff? It's been that kind of a year. But I also had an epiphany when a friend of mine reminded me that I have said in the past that one of the most stress-relieving things you can do is open your toys. So I thought, okay, you know what? That does sound like a thing that I would have said. And so, yeah, let's go ahead and open a few things, especially a few things that have been waiting a minute to be opened. Norman sent me this one. This is the TARDIS console from Doctor Who from around, I believe it's season 14 into 15. They temporarily switched off to a different interior set for the TARDIS, where it wasn't the white walls with the roundels cut out. It was wooden walls with roundels inlaid and a wooden console, and it was kind of like they were doing an alpha test for what we eventually saw as the Paul McGann console room. And it looked great on screen. It looked very Jules Verne. But when it was all put into storage in the BBC scenery docks, it promptly warped. And so they had to go back to a new version of the white walls. So much for that. But anyway, we have here the console, the smaller console with, it's almost like one of those desks with the roll-up covers, in that the buttons are covered behind hinged panels that can close up around the console. It's an interesting concept. It's a smaller one than the usual console, at least in universe. In the show, it was a smaller console than what they had in the past. And as always, and this is perhaps a futile quest of mine to try to find out, do any of these consoles work well as pieces alongside the character options action figures, which I have quite a collection of those, but very few of the Eaglemoss or Master Replicas pieces. And usually the TARDIS consoles are a much smaller scale than the character options figures. And you kind of know that going in, but you can do some forced perspective, put them in the background on the shelf, and just make it work. The consoles are lovely. I wish they had them for the figures themselves, but other than the first Matt Smith console and the David Tennant Christopher Eccleston console, and the junk TARDIS that Matt Smith ran into in one episode, those are the only ones made for the figures. So I do keep trying to see if any of these will actually work with the character options figures and not just the Eaglemoss figurines. The detailing is impressive, as small as it is. I mean, they got the rows of colored buttons right, which kind of looked like maybe they were cast off from the Liberator. And there's a part of the console that is just literally desk, like there's an inkwell that you see there. The detailing is really impressive, and let us waste no time in finding out. Ooh, wait a minute. Does this scale well with the figures? Let's try it out. Oh, look at that. I think we finally got one. That scales not ridiculously with the character options figures. That's a pretty close match in scale. Now, the console should perhaps be a wee bit larger, but because it is set up on that black hex base, as if it's an oversized gaming miniature, it lands at about the right height, and that counts for a lot. That actually looks great. You see the black base that I'm talking about there, so it's not just the console at floor level. So it gets that little boost, which helps it considerably. But no, that looks fantastic next to those two. Let's see if we can get a detail view on the console. Again, the detailing is wonderful, considering how tiny the molded buttons and knobs and cables are in there. That is really impressive. And of course, the desk pieces in there, the inkwell that you see. And I'm assuming that is like the Doctor's 500-year journal. Probably should be closer to 900 by now, but the Doctor's been busy. Yeah, as the Doctor is wont to do. So, sooner or later we had to hit one that wasn't ridiculously out of scale with the character options figures, which look, it's a ridiculous tilting at windmills kind of quest of mine to find an Eaglemoss or Master Replica's TARDIS console that fits in with the much larger scale of the character figures, because those two things are not made by the same outfit. They're not meant to really go together. But if you want the classic consoles, really the only game in town are the ones that have been done by Eaglemoss and more recently Master Replicas since Eaglemoss went under. And you cannot beat that detailing. That is truly, truly impressive. And it looks great next to them. Okay, perhaps my quest is finally over. I will tell you right now that this development definitely pleases the Daleks. So, it had to happen sooner or later. Actually, it really didn't. I am surprised that it did finally happen. There we go. Finally, an Eaglemoss Master Replicas console that does not look tiny next to character options figures. The law of averages was not in my favor here, but I am glad that this finally worked out. Thank you very much, Norman. Thanks, buddy. That's really cool. That is really cool. I might not have bothered to get that piece for myself, but I am definitely very grateful that it was sent to me.